Hey everybody, hope you're all doing good and staying happy, healthy, and safe during the pandemic. Wish I could get a haircut. I'm still bulldozing through my pile of shame, painting everything that's nautical, and so I'm working on my Wrath of Kings stuff from Hadross. And I'm a little bummed out that this game just went bye-bye because I love these minis and I can't find them anymore. There's some stuff that I wish I could get. But I'm going to try an experiment. This is something that YouTube recommends, is doing multi-part videos. So this is just going to be part one where I do paint prep. And also I kind of wanted to see whether people are more interested in painting or seeing like all the steps, like whether they want to see how much goes or prepping stuff and like making bases and stuff like that, or if they just want to see the painting. So if you want to see the painting, you can skip to part two. If you want to see all the prep, this is the one. So anyways, yeah, we'll get on with it. So I managed to get these guys off eBay pre-assembled and on the cheap, which is my favorite way to get minis. And whoever made these, you know, they did a good job with putting everything together, and there's just like maybe a little tiny bit of seam cleanup and things like that. They did super glue these guys to these bases without doing any basing, and I'm kind of happy that there's not like crappy basing, but snapping them off was a little bit hard. And I could have used some super glue softener on these guys, but I'm a little impatient sometimes. And also they came off okay, just by pulling on them. There was a few that needed just a little bit of surgery on their feet, you know, on their little sprue parts to get them off. But yeah, not too bad. Not really sure what the plan was with whoever put these together, what their plan was to do with basing. So keeping with the kind of nautical theme, I think I'm gonna make some bases with foam core, and then some bases with some cork. And I'm gonna try and make them look like rocks that are sort of lining a seashore. I'm gonna do some like sandy kind of stuff, and then I'm gonna do some little static grass tufts. So for the foam core, I just ripped the backing off of one side, and then I left the backing a little bit on the other side to kind of protect it from the super glue, because I don't want the super glue to melt the foam. So yeah, less is more. But one thing that's nice about working with the foam core stuff is that you can just push the little dude's feet into it and it'll just go right in there, which is kind of nice. But yeah, super glue does melt it, so you do have to be careful with that and watch out for the fumes too. But I think that the foam core can make more convincing looking rocks, and then the core kind of makes more like stylized looking rocks. But I like both, which is why I'm doing both. And also I want to have a little bit of variation in how they look with the different bases. And for the Caxus, I think that's what they're officially called. I'm calling them Tritons. I have some bigger, thicker, chunkier pieces of cork that I'm going to use on them too, to make them look even more bigger and taller and more epic. And they're going on bases that are large enough to make them large creatures in D&D as well. And because I'm a little bit of a klutz, I'm going to go ahead and pin 1 foot on these guys too, just because they're a little bit higher up. They're not as low to the ground as the other guys are. So I'm going to go ahead and pin them and make it long enough to go pretty much all the way through the core, not through the base, but just to give these guys a little bit of reinforcing, just in case I drop them. And then I'm gonna go ahead and throw some larger rocks around these guys' bases. Well, not rocks, but little slightly larger pieces of gravel around the bases on these guys. And I forgot to put some like chunks of like aquarium gravel down like I usually do. So I did something later that was a little bit different with that, but it was kind of a cool experiment. I learned something. Yeah, so usually I'll super glue down some slightly larger little rocks like aquarium rocks, or slightly larger pieces of gravel. Like what you can do is just go down to the creek, or the beach, whatever, grab some sand, and then sift through, or not sift through it, but put it through a strainer, like you would use to drain your spaghetti or whatever. And then you have different sizes of rocks, so just put down some of the big ones first, and then super glue those ones down, and then put down some finer sand later with like watered down PVA glue. But I tried something different this time. So what I'm doing is I'm gonna take, well, this is actually Mod Podge, but it's Mod Podge gloss, and so I'll never use it for anything else. Just somebody gave it to me because they knew I'd use it for something. But I'm gonna use the Mod Podge to do everything. No super glue, and it's really nice because it seeps into the cracks and everything, and then it also has a longer working time, and then I can use a brush to brush it in and get it into the cracks, and like just brush it off the areas where I don't want it with my finger, and not worry about it, or use water to just push it off the areas where I don't want it. And then I can even brush in with some more water to kind of make it settle into the cracks more. But the Mod Podge is kind of the perfect consistency right out of the pot, so to speak, to do that, to just run down into the cracks and stuff, instead of like watering down some Elmer's or some like tacky glue or whatever. But it was kind of a nice experience. I think I'm going to be doing that a lot more for basing in the future. But it's really nice to be able to use water and a brush to push around the glue and take it off areas where I don't want it. Like, for instance, one of my pet peeves is when you see people do basing and then they glue a whole bunch of rocks to the model's feet. And then you're like, oh, if I bought that from you off like eBay or whatever, I would have to do something to get those little rocks off of the model's feet. And this is a surefire way to make sure that you don't ever have that problem. You can just push them off the model with a little bit of water. And last part of assembly, I'm just going to go in and do a little bit of gap filling. There was one guy that needed a little bit of surgery on his hand to do some gap filling, but I am not good enough at that to do that on camera. It requires all of my concentration to do. But yeah, same thing with this stuff. You can just use a little bit of water to kind of smooth it out and get it into the cracks where you want it. I'm just using some squadron putty, and that stuff is nice because it just comes out of the tube. You don't have to actually mix it together like an epoxy putty or something like that. It works really good for little gap filling jobs, not big ones. And I'm just going to do a teeny tiny little bit of scraping on these guys, a little bit of seam line cleanup. Whoever put these together did a really good job with that for the most part. Saved me a lot of time and effort. But if you really want to improve your paint job, that's a quick, easy way to do that, is to just make sure that you've taken all the seam lines off. But with these guys, it kind of felt like I was like the dentist coming in after the hygienist had already done everything and just saying, yep, looks good, send them to billing. And it's time to have a priming party. So yeah, I'm going to use the airbrush to do this. If you like to use a rattle can, that's great. I don't really like rattle can primer because it's expensive, it stinks, and then I feel like it's way harder to get into the little nooks and crannies with it. I feel like doing the airbrush just does a way better job of getting the model from like every angle. And I go through a ton of black primer at my house and don't spend a ton of money on it, that's for sure. I know there's a lot of people that are Chaos Black guys. There's a lot of people that are Steino Res guys, and then I'm a Vallejo fanboy. Now I'm gonna go ahead and do a Zenithal Prime on these guys. And I'm using some more Vallejo. I'm using Vallejo. This is Model Air, and it's a nice gray color. And what I'm doing is I'm going to hit everybody from a 45-degree angle. And this is one of the reasons why I like to paint on these MDF panels, is that I'll just shoot all the guys from 45 degrees and then hit them all, make sure that I get them in the face and stuff. Like, I want to pick out some of the details. Like, I want their faces to be focal points, I want weapons to be focal points, and then I'll just sort of rotate the board as I go and make sure that everybody has good even coverage, has that good 45-degree kind of light coverage. So I'm just, creating some highlights on the model so that I know where all of my light sources belong on these guys. And the last step for me when I'm doing a Zenithal Prime is to do a little bit of a off-white dry brush. So I don't want anywhere on the model that's white, and I don't want anywhere on the model that's black, really, unless it's like in a deep recessed shadow, because I don't want anywhere on the model to look like a hole. So I'm just going to make sure that everything has details picked out on it, and I want all the folds, like fabrics, like details in the sculpts, and weapons, faces, everything to pop out and have good detail. So the last part, I want to do it by hand. And one way that I like to do this is I'll kind of load up the brush with a little bit of paint, take most of it off, and then I'll test it on my hand to see if I'm picking up the ridges of my hand with it. And then I'll start on the very top of the model and then work my way down, so that by the time I get to the model's feet, then like the dry brush is pretty much gone. Like, there's taken almost all of the paint out of it. When I was in art school, we did this thing. It was an exercise called a window shade drawing, and what you do is you start at the very top of the page, and then you work your way down, so that by the time that you get to the end of the drawing, the bottom of the drawing shouldn't actually be done. Like, the idea is to get as photorealistic of a drawing as possible, and then by the time you get to the bottom of the drawing, it's still in like the sketchy form. And like, I think this is like the same kind of idea. But yeah, like I don't want anywhere, you know, black that should have a little bit of light hitting it. But I think it really helps to just pick out some of those last details by hand, because, you know, it works better than just shooting everything with the airbrush from top down. You know, pick out those last little details and make sure that everything looks how you want it. But yeah, that's how I want guys to look when I'm done doing the Zenfall Prime. So that's how everybody looks when they're all prepped up and ready to go. And some of these guys have the cork bark bases on them. Some of them have the foam core bases on them. I just picked out one of each pose. So the box comes with 4 different Deepmen poses and then 2 of the different cactus poses. So yeah. Next up is gonna be painting. So take care of yourselves, you guys, and stay safe, and I'll see you when we start painting.